Alright, what's happening everybody? It's your man Akeen and welcome to today's vlog. It's time for me to start giving you my grades for each team for their selections of this year's NFL Draft. Today, I'm going to talk about the NFC East Division and their squads. Beginning with the Dallas Cowboys. I think they had a pretty good draft. I have to give them an A- for their picks. Starting with the number one pick, Tyron Smith, the offensive tackle from USC. I think he's a great blocker who can protect Tony Romo in the long run. And I like in the second round how they picked up outside linebacker from North Carolina, Bruce Carter. He can make an impact in the special teams as well, and I think he could make a good nickel linebacker in replacement of Bobby Carpenter, who turned out to be a bust. Carpenter was a 2006 first-round pick from Ohio State, and he turned out to be a bust in the NFL, and they really need to fill in this void. I think Carter can fill out that position and put some depth in the linebacking core. And I liked in the third round how they picked up DeMarco Murray, the running back from Oklahoma. He's a great all-purpose back, and I think he could be well used in the third down situations. He's a great all-purpose back. He could get outside of the backfield and catch some passes. I think he's a great fit for the Dallas Cowboys and the rotation of Felix Jones and Marion Barber III. In the fifth round, they picked up cornerback Josh Thomas from Buffalo. He's a great cover corner. He runs a 4.5 40. Great selection. I think he could be a good starting cornerback in the future in replacement of Terrence Newman. Newman is headed to his ninth season in the NFL, and they might be looking towards the future of replacing him later on. In the sixth round, they picked up Dwayne Harris, the receiver from East Carolina. I think he could be a great possession receiver, slot receiver as well. And in the seventh round, I think they did great picking up fullback Sean Chappis from Georgia. He's a great blocking fullback, and I think he could be the next Daryl Johnson, who can be the lead blocker for the running backs for the upcoming seasons. He's a great blocker, great competitor, and a good team player. I think this was a great selection in the seventh round. So overall, I have to give this team an A-. I really did like this draft. Great job for Dallas. Now, next, I'm going to talk about the Giants, the G-Men from New York. I think they had a pretty decent draft as well, going with their first pick, Prince Amukamara, the cornerback from Nebraska. This was a great selection because they really needed a cornerback. And having him picked in the 19th selection, that was a pretty good steal. I thought he was going to be gone with the Detroit Lions with the 13th selection or selection before that. But he ended up but the Giants were fortunate enough to have him wait until the 19th selection, and they had to pick him up, and this was a good pick. In the second round, they went with Marvin Austin, the defensive tackle from North Carolina. He's a great athlete, and I think he could be able to stop the run. But this was a question mark for me. I really think they should have went with an inside linebacker with this selection, like Martez Wilson from Illinois. He's a great player, and they really need some linebacking in the linebacking core. The best linebacker that they have who has great experience is Keith Bullock, but he's reached old age, and they really need a good inside linebacker who can hunt the football and get some tackles. I think they should have went with an inside linebacker, but they did go with one in the fifth round with Greg Jones from Michigan State. His stock dropped this past season his stock dropped in this past season. He had a great junior year, 154 tackles, 9 sacks. He had a great junior season, but his stock dropped. He lost some speed. He runs a 4.8 40. Plus, he sometimes has a hard time shedding blockers, and that could be a problem in the NFL. But he's still a good pick in the fifth round. But I think they should have went with an inside linebacker in the second round. But Marvin Austin is great. But I do like the fact that they picked up Jarrell Jerrigan from Troy, the receiver. He's a great open field runner who is very elusive. He could be a return specialist as well for the G-Men. He was a third round selection. I think this was a good pick. In the fifth round, they picked up James Brewer, the offensive tackle from Indiana. He helped Ben Chappell have a great season. He was a good blocker. I think he could give Eli some insurance and some protection this season. And in the seventh round, I think they pulled out one of my a great steal in this draft, and this was one of my steals that I mentioned before. Darrell Scott, the running back from Maryland. He runs a 4.3 40, a very fast player, NFL ready. The only thing that concerns me is his injury issues, but he is a great back, and I think he has the potential to become a starter. But for now, he could be a third down back as well, just like DeMarco Murray, and have a great rotation with Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. This was a steal in the seventh round, so this was a good pick. So overall, I would have to give the Giants a B. They had a solid draft, and I do like their selections. My question mark was the Marvin Austin pick, but it was still a great pick, so I have to give him a B. Now the Eagles are next. They had a decent draft as well. They went with Danny Watkins, the guard from Baylor, with their first selection. He's a great pulling guard who has a lot of experience and intelligence. The only thing that concerns me is his longevity in the league. He's turning 27 this year. A 27-year-old rookie, that could be a little bit of a problem, but I think he's a great blocker. He could give a little bit more protection for Mike Vick and help him stay inside the pocket for his passes. This was a good selection. And in the second and third round, they went straight to the secondary. In the second round, they picked up Jaquan Jarrett, the safety from Temple. They kept it in the city and kept it in state, going with their Temple player with Jarrett. Jarrett's a great player, and he reminds me so much of Brian Dawkins because he demonstrates leadership on the field. Plus, he's a good helper. He's a good supporter in the run. He had 74 tackles last season. He's a very aggressive player, and he's like the center field like safety in college football, and he could bring that to the NFL. He's a great player. And in the third round, they picked up Curtis Marsh, the cornerback from Utah State. He has quick feet, and I do like his speed closing into the ball. He runs a 4.5 40, and he had 13 pass breakups last season. He has great ball skills and great cover skills. I think he can work opposite of Asante Samuel and have a great cornerback tandem in the NFL, but we will see. This was a good selection. And in the later rounds, they addressed the linebacking core, but I think they could have picked up some better linebackers, but they did still pick up decent linebackers like Casey Matthews from Oregon. This was a great selection. And they also picked up Greg Lloyd from UConn and Brian Rule from Ohio State. Those were decent selections. I think they could have went better, but I still like their picks. Decent linebackers. And in the seventh round, they picked up a versatile fullback in Stanley Havili from USC. He could catch some balls outside the backfield, but the only thing that concerns me is his size. He needs to bulk up a little bit and work in his blocking technique, but he's a very great versatile player. And I do know that the Eagles will use him in some way. He's a great player, team player, and I do like this kid. So overall for the Eagles, I would have to give him a C+. They had a decent draft. Not bad draft, but not great as well. Decent, so I'm going to give him a good C+ in this one. Now, the Washington Redskins. Okay. This was hard to evaluate because they started off their draft great, but then in the later rounds, they kind of had some picks where I was just scratching my head and not understood why they had their selections. They traded a lot of times in the NFL draft to get more picks, and that was a great thing because they really needed more selections. But the players that they selected, I was like, that's who you're gonna pick? Wow. But in the first round, they picked up Brian Kerrigan, the defensive end from Purdue. He had 26 tackles for loss last season. He's a great player who could get in the backfield and wreak havoc in the line of scrimmage. I really did like this pick. But in the rest of the draft, I really think they should have went to the offensive side of the ball. With their second pick, they went with Jarvis Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Clemson. That was a little bit of a problem for me because I think they should have went with the quarterback with this selection. They still could have picked up Ryan Mallett from Arkansas. He's a big kid, big arm, and he's very accurate. Yes, he needs to work on his mobility and his footwork, but he is still a great quarterback. Donovan McNabb does not want to be part of this team anymore, and he wants to be traded. So they really need to address the quarterback position, and they should have picked up a quarterback now instead of waiting for the free agencies and hoping that they could pick up a good free agent. Now, I didn't think they should have went with a defensive tackle because they had a great defensive end in Kerrigan with their selection. Kerrigan can get in the backfield and cause some problems to get some tackles for loss. I don't really think they should have went with a defensive tackle with this pick. But in the third round, they picked up a good receiver in Leonard Hankinson from Miami. The only thing that concerns me is that he sometimes drops some balls or double catch the balls, meaning he bobbles the ball sometimes and has to take a second effort to catch the ball. And that could be a problem in the NFL because once the ball is tipped, it's all live. Most of the cornerbacks and safeties are out to kill the receivers after the ball is tipped. And I think that could be a problem. He really needs to catch the football first-hand possession. But he's still a great receiver. Big guy, 203 pounds, and he had 13 receiving touchdowns last season at Miami. This was a decent selection. But in the next rounds, and from rounds 4 to 6, they picked up two more receivers, and 2 running backs where I was just scratching my head. Roy Halou Jr., who they selected, the running back from Nebraska, in the 4th round. I thought they should have picked up a couple of better running backs like Jordan Todman from Connecticut and Kendall Hunter from Oklahoma State. Both of these players were picked later in the later rounds, but I think I had to evaluate both of these players better than Roy Halou Jr. I was just scratching my head with Halou Jr. He's a decent player. He did do well in Nebraska, but I don't think Redskins should have picked him. And then they picked up Niles Paul, the receiver from Nebraska. He's a decent all-purpose player, but he is not like Randall Cobb from Kentucky. And I kind of was confused of why they picked him. But I do like the pick of Aldrick Robinson in the 6th round from SMU. He's a great receiver, and he reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Sanders from SMU, who was a big factor in the receiving corps for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was a decent selection for the Steelers, and I think Aldrick Robinson is kind of the same for the Redskins. He could be a reliable player at the receiving corps. I did like that pick, but I did not really like the Evan Royster selection in the 6th. And later in the 6th round. He's a good running back from Penn State, but his stock dropped this season. He looks like he's lost a little bit of his speed, and he's not a good cutback player like I thought. He was a great cutback player his junior and sophomore seasons, but in his senior year, he just didn't show a lot of spunk to me, and he dropped out out of my top 5 running backs, and he lost his stock in the NFL draft. But I'm a little bit confused of all their selections in that round. And they didn't really address the offensive line. Redskins did not. They really needed to address the offensive line and have more protection for their quarterback. They didn't really pick up an offensive lineman until the 7th round with Maurice Hurt from Florida. He's a decent player. I'm not going to hate on that. But they should have addressed the offensive line with their earlier picks in the 4th round. I think they should have addressed that as well. They just went with 3 receivers and 2 running backs. I don't really think they really need that much help in the skill positions because they have Ryan Torain at running back, and they have Santana Moss and Anthony Armstrong at the receiving corps. They just went too far with their playmakers on the offensive side. Plus, they should have went with the quarterback in the 2nd round. So I had a really just confused about their selections. So overall, I have to give this team a C-. And I think I'm being very nice when I say that. I think some people will say they deserve a D for their selections. They did a great job getting the trade so they could get more selections, but the picks that they chose, I was like, what were they thinking? I do not understand. Maybe Mike Shanahan and Dan Snyder has something planned up, but I just do not get it. So I have to give this team a C-. And like I said, I'm being very nice on this one. For my next blog, I'm going to talk about the NFC West division and talk about their squads and give each grades for each of their teams. Thank you for watching today's blog. I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.